A very warm welcome to this video where we are going to discuss how to heal sick houses. So if you are living in a house in which you feel very tired, if you are living in a house which you want to sell but it is not selling, if there are a lot of family conflicts happening in the house, if you find it difficult to sleep in a particular house, or if you are suffering from unexplained health problems, then this talk is going to be of immense use for you. To discuss with me about healing the houses or healing sick houses is a very special guest today. His name is Adrian Incledon-Webber. He is a house healer and an energy healer. He is the author of the books Spirit and Earth and Heal Your Home. Apart from all this, he has also been the former vice president of the British Society of Dowsers. It gives me immense pleasure and honor to welcome you, Mr. Adrian, to this particular talk.
Thank you, Prabal, and it's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. In fact, the first thing which I was thinking to bring up is that in this part of the world, people are hardly aware about, even the need to heal houses. For example, a few months ago, I received a client. He was a patient who was suffering from the after effects of brain stroke. So some doctor referred him to me because he has some speech issues. I started working on him. He used to come with his wife. And once he started to get better, he asked me, "Can you tell me, doctor, why did this happen to me?" I said, "Why didn't you ask your doctor who was treating the brain stroke? You are asking to me who's treating just your speech issues."
Yes.
So then we met in the next session. He asked me the same question again. I kept mum. But in our last interaction, they again posed me the same question. Why did this happen to me? And at that particular point in time, I had just got up from my meditation session, and this was my first healing after the meditation. So I told him, see, there are certain illness and death residues in the place where you stay. And because of that, probably this is an after effect which you got. To my surprise, what he did was, he immediately called his elder son, who was instrumental in buying that particular house about 6 months ago. And he revealed to me, after talking with his son, that you are right. This particular house which we are staying in has been sold around 3 times in the past 18 months. And one of the previous owners was suffering from a severe type of cancer, and he passed away, and I am sleeping in the same room. After that, when I was in London, at the place where you are right now, he was calling me, and how can we clear this? How can we clear this? How can we clear this? And here we are today with you, who is an expert on how to clear all these things from houses. And you have mentioned in your book something about the divorce house syndrome. Probably you also started your journey sometime, and this was one of the first things you noticed, that there are some houses which lead to divorces. I would be grateful if you would just shed some of your experience regarding this.
Of course, and it really is. It started, I guess I had my own estate agency, house estate agency business for about 25 years. And, you'd walk into some houses and get a lovely glowing feel when you walked in, and they were always the houses that sold very quickly. Then you get other houses you'd walk into and it just didn't feel right. You walked in and perhaps your hair's on the back of your hands stood on end to say, look, there's something odd going on here. And they were always the most difficult. And of course, it then became problematic when people would go to view, and as most people do, they don't want to upset the person who's selling the house. So they'd say, the house is lovely, it's wonderful, and it's ideal for us. And they'd never hear from them again. So of course we would then get the telephone call to say, I thought they were going to buy it. And we said, no, they phoned in saying it's just not quite right for them. And of course they would say, the number of bedrooms was perfect, the house was perfect, the location was right, it was well decorated, but we just didn't like the house. And of course, the more that would be reported, it just used to strike me as not necessarily odd, because I would have picked up those vibrations when I first went in. But obviously something happened there in the past that's causing the house to feel the way it feels. Now, as I say to many of my, or most of my clients, that anybody that's been in that house since it was built, and it doesn't matter whether it's family, friends, business acquaintances, workmen, whoever, will leave an essence of themselves behind. Now, they may be the most pleasant, happy-go-lucky people that you'll ever imagine you'd meet. However, because their energies are vibrating at a very different level to yours and your family's, it's going to be detrimental to the family. And that will, of course, build up over the time. The one main house that really, really hit me very hard was we'd just opened up in business, the two of us, young lads. We got a phone call from this lady saying, can you come and value our house for us?
Mm-hmm.
So we popped up, and she explained that it had been on the market, that they'd had a buyer for it, but at the last minute it fell through. She explained that she'd bought it from a couple who were getting divorced, and there it is, 3 years down the line, they're also getting divorced. We put the house on, we got it sold very quickly because it was a very nice, lovely, beautiful presented house. People moved in. 3 years down the line, a phone call to say, can you come and value the house for us? And they were a lovely couple. I'd got to know them quite well over that time. Went in there and, sorry?
The same house.
The same house, yep, 3 years later. And I went to value it, and the lady said, unfortunately, we're getting divorced, so we'd need to sell the house. We sold it again very quickly. And then again, 3 years down the line, the same house. The people who bought it phoned me up and said, we're having a breakup, can you come and put the house on? And that happened every 3 years, almost to the day, for the 24, 25 years that I was in business there. So that was the one thing that really, really got me. As I finally got the business sold, I started to look at that one house and thought, I wonder if there's anything I can do to help the people who are there. I've been doing quite a lot of hands-on healing, and I'd studied Reiki and a lot of the sort of the Tibetan and Nepalese and Indian healing techniques to see whether I could make a change. I met the people. I knew the next door neighbor very, very well. And I said, how do you get on with your new neighbor? They'd been there about 6 months. And he said, yeah, we've had a barbecue together. So, we get on quite well. Why? I said, could you perhaps invite them round for a meal one evening and just happen to invite me as well? He said, why? You're not going to talk to them about that funny stuff you're doing now, are you? And I said, well, if the conversation comes up. So we got chatting to the couple, very, very pleasant couple. And we got chatting about the house and how many times we'd sold it, and, how it was kind of almost like a divorce house that every 3 years it came on the market. So, of course, his one comment was, well, why did you sell the house to us? I said, well, I didn't although we knew about it, I didn't know enough about energy work in those days, but I've been doing a lot of work on family and friends' houses. Can I do some work on yours? And his wife said, oh, yeah, please. He was very skeptical and said, well, yeah, I suppose so. Did the work, and they've been in there now for at least 15, 16 years. So the cycle was then broken. And that then gave me the confidence to start doing this full time.
Excellent, excellent. This is really very insightful, very insightful. So that means there are patterns. I noticed when you said this specifically that people leave their essence behind. So whenever I think we are moving to a new house, it is very important to get the space cleaned, apart from the geopathic stress healing done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. You'll find that, when you go into a new house, it doesn't matter how well the people before had left it and how clean they'd left it. You'll always get the mop out, you'll get the duster, and you'll start cleaning the house of anything that's been left behind. But of course, people don't really do that energetically. So we're doing it physically, but the energetic, spiritual side is something that is equally, if not more important, to carry out.
Excellent, excellent. The very next thing which I want to bring up is because when we do the cleaning, I think there's a lot of work involved. People in Austria, I've heard, that when they sell their house or they purchase the house, so if you move in the house, you will find the map of the house and which has the layout of the house. Also, it has the energetic layout of the house. That means that if there are things which belong to the energy world, which you deal with every day, like ley lines, like water veins, etc., they are already marked on it. But here in rest of the world, probably, I have never come across this kind of a custom where people are attaching that kind of importance to the energy framework along with the layout of the house, so that people who enter the house can, effectively manage to keep their furniture or whatever by avoiding those particular areas which are energetically detrimental. So, what are
Sure.
your ideas on it? And if you can, to our viewers, show some of your work, at least one or two, or whatever you feel like, so they understand how much work goes into it when we come across and heal a particular house.
Of course. Certainly in Austria, I think it's certainly been well known that that's happened, but obviously not everybody will buy into this. A lot of people, including my father and my brother in particular, who are still very, very skeptical about what I do. But it's been proved many thousands of times that what I do works for people. And the same in Austria and the same in Germany, where a lot of the early experiments on geopathic stress were carried out, certainly in the 1920s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as an example, just to show people the sort of map that you can produce when you're working on somebody's house.
Oh, wow, that is fantastically drawn. So,
And we,
there are these straight lines and there are these wavy lines. What are these wavy lines? Are they water veins?
yeah, the wavy lines are water veins, and the rest then, as the little key shows in the top corner, if I can show you on there, they can be things like earth energy lines, dynamic energy lines, fault lines. Obviously, you've got things like the San Andreas fault in the States. Okay, they're not as big as that. They're minute cracks in the earth that can actually channel human emotion as well as detrimental earth energies. So part of what I do is obviously earth energy related, because of course you go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I also saw in the drawing which you were showing me, in the energetic map which you were showing me, something which I could correlate, that when I was reading your book, Heal Your Home, a couple of years ago, I saw that you mentioned something about energy spirals, although in
Yes,
my practice I never found any till now. But in your drawing, I think what you were showing, I think you have marked the energy spirals as well.
they were. And what I will do, I will email you the sort of the nice copy of this, so you can perhaps put it up on screen when you're editing.
Sure.
Energy spirals, they're all over the place. I think that they just tend to be a sort of a natural phenomenon with the planet. But of course, they do pick up detrimental energies from people. And, as two lines cross, although they're not always apparent on a plan that two lines are crossing, but you can pick up some quite detrimental energy spirals that can cause people a lot of problems, certainly sleeping, insomnia, night sweats, vertigo as well as another one, because obviously you're very much in this whirlpool of energy. And it's a bit like a whirlpool in an ocean, it's going to go round and round and round. And of course, it will bring a lot of problems to people's lives. So that's kind of part of the healing process we need to look at.
And again, I am reminded of one of my cases. Again, the person had this brain stroke. He is a person who had a very high position in the government of India. And suddenly he's facing a lot of headaches, incessant headaches. He tried all the painkillers, but the headache won't go. So he calls me up, doctor, can you do something about it? I said, let me try. Give me 5 sittings. Maximum, I will take 5 sittings. If I can't bring an end to your headaches, then probably I won't be able to do it. So he comes to me. I take 2 sittings with him. Nothing happens. Then I said, okay, you just go. Let me do something tonight. If you feel better, then you can come to me. Otherwise, I would have done whatever I could by then. So at night time, I said, I do all the energy work I can. And the next morning, I receive a call from him. And he was very elated that the headaches had stopped. So I am very happy. He is very happy. And he says, I just want to meet you once. So he comes over and he now ponders me this inevitable question. Why did this happen to me? Now, this again, people will just keep on asking, why. So now when he asks me that, I said, I don't actually know, but in my healing, when I was healing, I found that there was a lot of geopathic stress, which
Mm.
I healed as well. So now he says, okay, doctor, can you just, because he was very a proactive kind of a person. These top decision makers, they tend to be very proactive. So
Indeed.
he's the kind of guy, he said, okay, then probably, if I am living at a place which is bringing me harm, it might cause me harm again. Can you just check right now what is the geopathic stress of my place? We checked, etc. We did some things, and then he said, I'll draw you a map and
Mm.
you analyze it, and I will come again in 1 or 2 days when you'll call me, and we will have one sitting before I finally bid you goodbye. I said, okay, that's fine. So I do all my marking just on a rough layout, because it was not drawn to the, it was not drawn precisely according to the measurements, but just
Yep.
it was not carrying any labels like bedroom, bathroom. No labeling was done by him. That was the rough map which I had. I did all my work, and once he came, I showed him that there was a spirit line, there was also a water vein, and they were also intersecting in one particular point which I had drawn on the map. Now, what happened was that this man got really surprised, because he said that the place which you are showing me is the intersection of these two lines, is the exact place where my pillow on the bed falls. And this was the area where there was a lot of harm done to him.
Yes.
So therefore, it came to me that this is a very important practice, and probably we should, propagate that whenever a house is being sold, or whenever this kind of work is done, then people, rather than hiding about this fact, if they place the maps which are so wonderfully worked out by you, if they place it somewhere in the house, then they can become more meaningful for the people who are staying there.
Absolutely. And you'll find this time and time again, that when I get a plan through from a client of mine, I tend to take all the information off it as soon as it arrives. So I might not be able to work on them, or the timing might not be right for them for a couple of months or maybe 6 weeks. By that time, I've forgotten what rooms they are anyway, and I'll just have this plain map to work on. And again, as you rightly say, it's amazing how many people come back and say, that's where I sleep. That's where the baby sleeps,
Yes.
who never sleeps properly and is always up at night. I do the work, and then you suddenly get this lovely feedback to say, yep, baby is now sleeping, very content. I'm okay. The problems that we had, including headaches, have now gone, and the family's feeling great.
Yes.
And isn't it wonderful when you get that feedback? That's, I think, what keeps everybody, that keeps me humble, certainly, to think that you've channeled these amazing energies from the universe, even from a distance. And I've worked on many houses in India, certainly sort of Mumbai and sort of New Delhi and up in the Himalayas, where I've traveled many times, worked on houses over there. But of course, Prabal, the problem is a lot of people aren't that open-minded. They'll look at it and go, puff, anybody could just draw a squiggly line on a map. I don't believe it. But of course, if they move into the house and they start having problems, then all of a sudden you'll get them back and they'll say, oh, can you do some work on the house again for us, please?
Yes, yes, that's absolutely right. I 100% agree with you on this. Which takes me now to another segment of our talk, something related to Hollywood. They talk about, the haunted houses. I have never come across a haunted house, but my journey, of course, has been very less, and your journey has been immensely long. So, what is your take on haunted houses?
Obviously you do find them. Now, I guess we have to go to basics to actually work out what a ghost or a spirit might be.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of people, obviously we have the physical body, and then we have our auric field, if you like, the spiritual body surrounding us. And for me, when people pass over, obviously you're left with the physical body lying on the bed when they've passed over, and it's their electromagnetic field, their auric field, that then goes to the light. The problem then comes in if they're feeling guilty about something, if they feel that they haven't had a long enough life on the planet. Some people don't even know they're dead, perhaps if they die very quickly in a road traffic accident, or during the wars, people would be shot, and they'd never hear the bullet being fired from a gun. So there are many reasons why a lot of people don't go to the light. One of the most distressing ones for me really is when a mother is giving birth to a child and actually dies in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't go to the light because she's there to look after her child. That may be 200 years ago. The child obviously functioned well, grew up, lived her or his life, went to the light. But of course, poor old mum is still around trying to find her or him. And you've then got to really try and point out, look, they've already gone to the light and they're ready, waiting for you to arrive. So it is your turn to go. So there can be quite a lot of distressful things that have happened to people as to why they haven't gone. Now, I tend to find certainly in the UK and certainly in the States where I do a lot of work, there's a lot of spirits in people's houses. They don't necessarily ever have to have lived there, died there, have any contact with the people who live there. They can follow you back from the shops. They love the energies of newborn babies, for instance, and they also love the hormonal changes going on in teenagers. It's that up and down. It's the sort of 1 minute calm, the next minute banging up against the wall, causing all sorts of mayhem. That can actually attract spirits into the house. Most of them I don't find are particularly nasty. There's no sort of detrimental thoughts behind it. But because they haven't gone to the light, there's that sort of the wrong vibration. It's almost like a frictional vibration that's going on between the living and those that have passed over but not gone to the light. So often it's a matter of trying to find out when they've died, what they've died from, and then once you know that, you can help guide them into the light to help them move through to actually go and see their family and friends once again. But I've come across many of them. I've had experiences as well. One of the reasons now why I do all this work remotely rather than travel to people's houses, because it's easier for me and safer for me to work in my healing room with my, as you see, all my sort of the Ganesh and the Buddhas and the Maitreya Buddhas in the background and candles being burnt. It's my sanctuary. It's my safe place. But to go to somebody's house where all these problems are happening, you're just inviting yourself to actually pick up a lot of the bad energies that are there and start causing yourself many problems as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And that is where, I wanted to have your opinion, because entities we also find, but the only problem is not to an extent that it is making a particular place absolutely inhabitable, and that too for so many years that you make a movie out of it. So that is stretching too far. That is stretching too far. Yes, I have been able to address some of the effects of entities. Like, for example, one day I was awake at night and I received a message from a girl from Australia, and she said that in my house I am hearing some noises. And I said, okay, give me 10 minutes, let me do something and let us see whether that can be solved. That was my first experience with noises. And what I did was, I just found that there were some entities, I think 2 or 3, I've forgotten. And once we were able to get rid of it, she called me up and she said, yeah, the voices are no more there. The same thing, a similar kind of thing happened about 2 years ago. There was a lot of COVID in Delhi. And this is the place where I live. And we had to move out from here for about a month's time. So I went to a place called Mohali. Over there, I was living in a house where if you touch the handles of the knobs of the doors, suddenly you will find that there is some kind of current. It's not like you will die of that current, but it was some kind of uncomfy feeling. Sure. And it did not only happen with me, but it also happened with my daughter, with my mother, and the other people who were staying over there. And then they asked me, what can be this all about? I said, I don't know, probably some earthing problem, some engineer would be able to tell you about it. And then a couple of days later, since I had mostly nothing to do over there, that was not my usual place of residence. I was just whiling away my time. There's nothing to be done. It was COVID, it was lockdown. And I just said, okay, let me try something out. And what I did was I did just the space clearing. in the space clearing, there were one or two things, and one amongst them was this entity problem. And after the healing was through, then everybody said that we are not finding any currents when we are touching the knobs. So these were the two experiences where I felt that, probably noises and this current kind of feeling is some kind of an indication of the presence of entities in a house which can be easily solved. So I wanted to also ask you about some of the weird experiences which would have led to these kind of insightful discoveries in your journey, because you had so many of them. Coming out with that book, Heal Your Home Part 1 in 2013, and then in 22 with Heal Your Home Part 2, you have elaborated, you have expanded. So you have come across so many new things. If you could just share with our viewers one or two of them, I will be very grateful.
Certainly, I think from a spirit point of view, most of them, the Hollywood films, you just kind of really have to dismiss. I've touch wood, I've never really found, like a hand coming out of the screen. For me, that would probably scare me to death. But I find with many of the spirits, that there's no malevolence to them. They're just very sad individuals who haven't gone to the light. I always tend, when I work on a house, to actually move the spirits through first and foremost, because if you don't, you can start getting things beginning to move, because if you start working with the vibrational levels of the house, obviously the spirits are going to pick up on that. And so, we don't want problems to happen. We don't want things to move. We don't want things to fall off walls. So I always work on them first and foremost. I think probably one of the worst cases I found with spirits was only a couple of years ago. It was a very old house that probably dating back to about 1400s. It was an old farmhouse, but at the back of the farmhouse, an extension had been built probably about 70, 80 years ago. Now, all the families living inside, they never, ever wanted to sleep in that ground floor room. It was very small upstairs, so it was bigger downstairs. It was always very cold, and almost as you walked in, your breath would condense. And what I found was there were two spirits in there, two lady spirits that had died back in the kind of witchfinder days. We had, I think back in the late 1500s and 1600s, there was a very famous witchfinder general, and there's a Hollywood film about it with Vincent Price, who was there, Matthew Hopkins. And he had, but obviously it wasn't him, it was one of his cohorts that had actually killed two of the local women. One was burnt at the stake, exactly where this extension was built. The other one was drowned close by, but they were friends. They hadn't gone to the light because obviously they communicate with them, put them at their ease to say, look, nothing bad is going to happen, but here's a vision of what awaits you as you move through to the light. And they went through very quickly. And I rarely ever tell my clients exactly when I'm working on them, but I got a phone call about 2 hours later to say, what have you done? And I said, why? She said, the room is beautiful. I walked in there. There was this smell of lavender when I walked in. It was lovely and warm, and the light was so different as well. So you get that sort of feedback from people. So I would say to people, don't be scared of spirits. Most of them, they're not malevolent. They often are very unaware of you as you are of them. They're just kind of unwanted and unpaying house guests. If anybody had said to me, say 30 years ago, or even...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is some kind of a humanistic approach to deal with entities. What you're talking
absolutely.
About. Deal with them with empathy. Wow, wonderful.
Yeah. You have to. And I think with all of this work, you have to be very humble in what you're doing, because obviously we're channeling the energies of the universe, whether it's God or Mother Earth and the sun and the moon, try and channel as much as we possibly can. But of course, with all these spirits, they are just often very, very sad people that need help. And once you start to help them, you do get this wonderful feeling as they move through. But you do get weird. A house I was working on in America, and there were 3 spirits to move through. But one of them, who's now one of my spirit guides, had kind of come across and said, I'm not going to move with those 2 because they're peasants. They're, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the important one. I'm the one who, he was an Indian chief and shaman. He was a very, very renowned man. But as far as he was concerned, he was up here, they were down there. So once I'd moved the two of them through, then he'd say, right now, with a special ceremony, you can move me through. And it will be your honor to do so. And I thought, woof, we're dealing with a big ego here. And then about 18 months later, I was suddenly very aware of this incredibly strong presence who came through and said, I am now one of your spirit guides. And my name is Eagle That Soars. So he is a very, very high priest, shaman, Indian, Red Indian, Native American, very, very special man. So you do get this feedback and this amazing gifts as you start doing this work.
Excellent. That is such a wonderful experience you have been through. You also talk about, apart from like houses, how do we heal businesses? How do we heal workplaces? Because I remember about 7 to 8 years ago, there was a case where a person had retired from a PSU and he had put all his earnings into building up of a solar plant because the Indian government was giving subsidies to people who would build up solar plants to produce electricity. Our country is short of electricity, and therefore the government is subsidizing. Still, it is subsidizing. So one fine day, when everything is ready and he has put all his money into building up of that particular solar plant, which will produce electricity, it has to be audited by the government. So the government officials come, they audit, and they put some objections. Now, this man goes crazy because he says, all my money I have put into it. What will my children say? What did I do with the money which was supposed to be given to them? Because in India, it is common that, the money of the father goes to their children, and the children are looking towards like this, we will get this, we will get, and suddenly, suddenly you do something which is this kind of an activity where all the funds are wasted. So he was in a big mess. So somebody called me up for some kind of an Indian thing which we do, which we call as Vastu. Vastu means just like Feng Shui in China, we have Vastu in India. So I went over there. This is a place called Dehradun. It is a little far away from where I stay in New Delhi. And we went over there. I saw the place. My hands are a little sensitive by doing Reiki. So I just sensed that there was some part where I felt that this part is carrying human skulls or human body in it. But the point is that the man had already exhausted all his money. So there was no point in telling him that there are a lot of skulls here. So you excavate all the things and then we will see. So what I did instead was I said, okay, look, what we can do is that you just forget about this portion of the property. Think as if this is not yours. We will do some kind of a Vastu treatment whereby this portion will not be considered as yours. Of course, this will belong to you only. But for the time being, we are not changing any legal papers. We are just doing some kind of a solution which will make this portion of the land cut off from the rest of the land. And then in 30 days' time, he agreed to it. We did it. And after 30 days' time, the auditors came back again and they passed his solar plant. He was happy. And then, of course, I thought that probably, he might go for an excavation, but he never did. So I never know now that whether they were the skulls there or not, but definitely this is what I felt. And when I did something about it, we achieved the results and it helped him in his business. So I wanted to know from you firsthand, how can healing of workplace be helpful for business people?
With a lot of this, it's if we look at, there are several places that I found and worked on over the years that have a history of people going bankrupt or the businesses failing. And of course, what then happens, it's a little bit like, say, walking into a house that needs to be healed. You just got that impression. It's the hurt, the anguish, the anxiety. Anybody going bankrupt or a business failing is going to have a lot of emotional issues behind it. So the first thing I would always do is just to do a general clearing of all the emotional junk that's been, or the emotional outbursts that have been left behind by anybody who's actually had the businesses there. But of course, as you were saying with the solar farm, we also have to look at very much land, and we're doing land healing as much as people healing. So of course, what I would then do is to look, and as that map of the house, I would look at what's going on underneath the place to begin with. Sometimes you'll have what we call a ley line or human intent line. There could be some very, very powerful energy lines running beneath the business, which also need to be healed and cleared. So that's what I would start on to begin with, and then I would look at the human aspect. Also to see what's been going on in the properties next door, because of course, energy patterns from those two places will actually infiltrate what's happening within the business. So a lot of it is just clearing away the emotional stuff to begin with, and then looking at the earth energies, and then trying to almost plant or ground the business, because so many businesses aren't grounded. They've been changed a lot over the years. Walls have been knocked out, windows have been knocked out, and the energy just isn't flowing the way it should do. So it's almost trying to transform it, clear away anything that's happened in the past, to actually then have it as its own little entity now, and then clear the pavement at the front, because sometimes obviously the businesses have a pavement at the front, and also the road as well, because anybody walking past that shop or a business will leave an essence of themselves behind on the pavement. So if you do a clearing on the pavement as well, a clearing on the front of the building, and people will suddenly be able to see it afresh. And there was one business I worked on down south many years ago, and it was a hairdressing business. I think the story's in book one. People were walking past this lady's business, and she'd been there for quite a number of years, and they just weren't coming in. She was very quiet. She had her own clients from when she had a business further up the road. I did a clearing on the business. There were quite a few spirits in there, including one not particularly nice one. There'd been a gibbet there, where people got hung in the past. That energy needed to be cleared away at the front of the building, the hair salon, and also the pathway. And people were coming up to her and saying, "Have you just opened up your business?" And she said, "Brian, I've been here for about the past 5-6 years. I've never seen you before, and I've walked up this pavement every day to go to the shops." So it's that sort of thing that can happen. Suddenly, because you're clearing away all the detrimental energies from the past, you've suddenly got this brand new shiny building that everybody goes, "That's beautiful, we'll come and see you and buy things from you."
Very, very
And also,
interesting.
yeah, and also you need to look at the human element as well, the people you've actually got working with you. So what I would always do is, once I'm working, is ask permission from upstairs to be able to do a clearing on the staff, to be able to do a clearing on the management as well, just to make sure there are no pitfalls. People aren't sending bad thoughts, or there are no blockages there. So we will do a clearing on the workforce as well.
Great, great. That's very nice. But once you do these healings, are they en masse? I mean, do you, of course, there are 500 people working in a company. We can't go about healing each and every one. So probably you do it on a mass level.
Indeed. Yeah, I think you have to. Otherwise, none of us have got the time to work on, say, 500 people. And generally what I would do, and again, with Vastu, very similar, with earth, wind, fire, water, and ether, you'd start looking at the energy patterns behind it all. And obviously, if I'm working in India, I'll tend to normally change what I'm doing slightly to work with the local environment, because it's all different, and people's energy patterns are very different with you compared to, say, a little rural village in North Yorkshire where I live. So I try and vary it, and that's really why the second book had to come out, because I'd learned so much more over that time. And of course, it was one of the final questions I would ask is there anything else that I need to find that's detrimental to the family? And you suddenly get a yes response, and then you need to dig even deeper to actually find out what it is. So it's a voyage of finding out further knowledge and coming of age in many ways.
Excellent. Your answer had so many insights in it. You talked about, healing land. You talked about not only healing the property which we are healing, but also the properties nearby, because they might be leading us into a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you talked about a very important thing is that we heal the front of the office. I still
Yep.
remember one of my clients in a place called Gurugaon. They were opening up a convenience store. So they said, if you visit once and you approve, then we will open. I said, okay. So we went over there and I was standing in the front of the office and I was feeling that everything is okay, but the front has a problem. So I said, see, the entry has a problem and entry is very important. Unless you do something about it, this won't work. You will
Mm.
not generate profits. So after about a week's time, the person communicated with me and he said that yes, there has been a murder over here 3 years back. The laborers had a fight with each other, and there was murder at the exact place where you were standing, which happens to be the entry point. So as you rightly mentioned, the front of the office is very important. And of course, you also said that, to end up any kind of a healing with a question, is there anything else which is affecting adversely this person, this family, or this business, is something very important. But my cup of tea was a very, very important point, which you said that, people, when they are leaving their mess behind, we have to clear that off, the emotional mess behind. And nowadays, there are being a lot of layoffs, especially for the next 2 years till the time when Saturn will be staying in the sign of Aquarius, according to the sidereal zodiac, which we follow here in India, not the tropical one, which you follow in the Western astrology, which has about a 23-degree difference. So they are going to be layoffs. So, and they have already started. Elon Musk has laid off a lot of employees in India, probably in America also. There are a lot of companies which are doing layoffs. So once these people are going, of course, they are feeling bad about what is being done to them because their life, their families are being put under a lot of stress and jeopardy.
Yep.
So while they are gone, I think it makes sense for the businesses that after a layoff, which is a layoff of a major number of people, they should go in for this kind of a cleaning, the workplace cleaning, so that at least the rest of the people who are there can work with the maximum potential which they have without any kind of encumbrances, any kind of impediments or energetic blockages.
Absolutely. And of course, with a lot of that, and as you've been laid off, you can get things like psychic attack. You can get curses and spells that are being put on the business as well. So I think the trouble is with COVID, we're still dealing with an aftermath, and I think we will be for quite a number of years, as you rightly say. It is so hard for people, families, and businesses. So we have a lot of adjustment to make. But the more support we can give people, the better it is. And certainly with businesses, to do a clearing on the people that have perhaps been made redundant or have lost their jobs, we can do a lot of helping for those people.
Excellent. So let's come on to our concluding section of our talk, where I would like to first add that, you have mentioned that things which are there, which should be healed, which can be healed. Now, here I want to talk with you about things which can't be healed, or I also want to bring to your notice one particular aspect, which we call that there is a predisposition of a particular land to become ill again and again. We call a weak constitution of the land. In our Vastu Shastra, or the knowledge of Vastu, or the knowledge of places, the Indian knowledge, they say that there are some lands which are predisposed to illness. They will become again and again energetically ill. For example, if there is a land which is on the tri-junction of roads or on the crossings, then there will be a problem. It will suffer from bad air. They say bad air, which you and I are able to comprehend, because bad air means that might be some entity problem because the air is flowing, so the entities are flowing, or something like that. So they say that in our Shastras, it is said that these are the lands which are predisposed. So better refrain from buying that kind of lands, because no matter how well we clean them up energetically, still they are liable to get more of the bad energies easily. So what has been your experience regarding some of the things with respect to lands or houses which keep getting ill, and you have to work quite a number of times to make sure that it comes back to a normal, healthy state of affairs?
Absolutely. It is so difficult because, of course, we don't know what's happened to that piece of land over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years. And of course, India, just like the UK, has quite a bloody history, of battles and massacres and heaven knows what else. So that would be the first thing I would look at. Really, is perhaps what's happened there in the past.
Excellent.
And of course, with all of this stuff, there's always going to be layers. So, as let's say that there's been a big battle there, and there are still entities or spirits there, move them through, and it may take several months to do the work. But you move one layer, then another layer pops up. You move another layer. I tend to find with most land that you can heal it, so it is actually sort of workable once again, but it may not be an overnight success. The most problematical things that I found is dealing with EMFs, electromagnetic fields. Now, in most cases, it's a bit like modern smartphones. It's a bit like modems in people's houses. Because it's man-made energy, what I tend to do with my mobile, when I get it, I put it in between my two hands and imagine this beam of white light coming down from above and a beam of white light coming from Mother Earth. And just asking that anything detrimental or inappropriate that's contained within the mobile telephone be taken to the light and disposed of in an appropriate fashion, flooding it once again with light and love, leaving it in peace, balance, and harmony. So I do that with all the electrical goods. I mean, anything that comes into my house, and I know exactly what those are going to be. They work very, very well indeed. The one thing about that, Prabal, is it the actual bit you've got in your hand there, or is it somebody's thoughts that have gone into it in the first place, their intuition, their healing thoughts that have gone into it that actually makes the difference, or is it the piece of paper that you've got? That's always been my problem with crystals, with anything. Is it that intent you put into it? It's a bit like, a lump of coal will work just as well as a beautiful piece of amethyst crystal, but it's not quite so nice. It doesn't look quite so sparkly. But if I put the same intent into a lump of coal and bury it in the ground and say, that's going to heal the ground, it will work just as well as a piece of amethyst. So this is what I love about healing, is, the strength that we've got as human beings. And I think everybody can do this if they put their mind to it. But EMFs in particular, there was one case that it was the only time I've ever advised anybody to actually move house, because I still feel most of it, if you work hard enough, can be healed and sorted out. Young lad living in a house with his mother. He was about 16, 17 years old. At the end of their road, there was a mobile telephone mast, but it was shielded by a big oak tree, so it was just livable with. So we did a lot of work clearing away all the energy patterns in the house, the water, the energy lines, the ley lines, and we just about got it manageable for him. They were happy there, but then literally a month afterwards, the council came along and cut the tree down for whatever reason. And suddenly the full force of the output of the mobile mast was straight into his bedroom, and it was frying his brain. The only way that he could sleep is if his mother took him in the car and drove him many, many miles away up into a small secluded car park, and he would get maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep in the car. As soon as he came back, again, the output from the mobile telephone mast was frying his brain, and I couldn't do enough. It would have been a full-time job pretty much every day to work on it. So they moved house, and we then advised them on the best house to move to, or the best area to move to. They moved in and they lived happily ever after. That's been about 7, 8, 9 years. So there's a lot you can do with these, but just sometimes you have to give in and say, guys, you have to move. But it's only been once so far.
Excellent. But this EMF thing, I can understand, because nowadays we are using more and more of the gadgets. But you also recommended in your book to turn off the Wi-Fi at night, to use less of, microwaves whenever it is needed, turn on, use for the minimum time. And so that is one of the things which we can do. And I went to Kenya this February, and there are a few of my followers over there. One of them gifted me this particular sticker. And
Yep.
they said that it neutralizes the EMF. And therefore, I've been using it. I tried it on, then I did with my pendulum, how much EMF is it able to block some EMF? So I got a yes, and therefore I've been using this for quite some time, about 8-9 months till now. It is usable. I'm just checking when will it be over, the power of this to handle the EMF be reduced or what. So it is also a research for me. Probably in a couple of months' time, I'll be able to update you regarding the functionality of this particular thing.
Now, is it, I think, again, it's so intriguing. Is it the symbol? Is it the intent? Or is it now that the intent that you also believe that it's going to work, that it further energizes it and actually makes sure that it does 100% work to kill EMFs? That's what I find so fascinating about what we do.
Absolutely, I agree with you. That is quite a dilemma which we need to research and solve upon. I absolutely agree with you here, and I'm very grateful for you to be here with us today and talk so much about how to heal houses, how to heal workplace, and offer your experiences in this particular important energy work. I also look forward to interacting with you in future regarding healing people and some other aspects of the healing world and the healing journey. Thank you so much for being with me today, Adrian. Thank you so much.
A pleasure, Prabal, and it's been a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.